Yes, very good morning. Today, from the fourth batch, Sai Teja and Pranav going to disseminate the content related to recursion and error propagation. Yes, the session is open to you all. The fourth batch will complete the content, and once the fourth batch is over, then fifth batch will continue with the error estimation. Yes, Pranav.
Yes, sir. I'm just sharing the screen. Sorry. Sir, can you see my slide?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay. I'll just be starting it. Yeah. So here we are at the recursion, the part 3, which I wasn't able to present yesterday. I'll be presenting it today. The part 3 is basically we'll be trying and solving a problem using recursion. And here I've tried not to keep the already solved problems which we did in our first year. That is things like merge sort, binary search, or tower of Hanoi. These were problems which we saw in our introduction to Python course in first year itself. So I tried to take a problem which is slightly different when compared to those. So yeah, let's just proceed to the problem. Yeah, so the problem which I have taken is a famous problem. It's known as the 0-1 knapsack problem. So let's just have a look at the problem statement. So we are given weights and values of n items, and we are supposed to put these items in a knapsack of capacity W to get the maximum total value in the knapsack. So in other words, we are given two integer arrays, weight and value. So if we are trying to say, let's say that you went to your uncle's house or something during Diwali, and he said he just places some n number of items on a table, and you have a bag of, let's say, 50 units of capacity, and he says you can take any number of items with you to home. See, ideally you would want to take all the items, but the thing is you got a bag only of 50 units weight. So if you take more than 50 units of weight, means obviously your bag is going to tear off, and you can't. It's going to get wasted. So what you would try and see is to pick up items in such a way that first thing they would fit inside your bag, and second thing, since you are a little bit smart, each item has its own value. So you want to pick up your items in such a way that you take maximum value for free from your uncle. So that's how you're going to be smart, and you're going to optimize the maximum value which you can get. And now coming to why is and one thing is knapsack is just basically a bag. Nothing. It's just a fancy word for bag. And why is it called as a 0-1 knapsack problem is you cannot break an item. Let's say your uncle has kept items such as phone or a phone or a laptop or something. You can't take half phone with you. It's not something like rice. So that is known as a 0-1 property. You can either take the phone or you can leave the phone. So let's just try and see like how actually we are able to solve this problem. So here the first way is the way what we try and see is we list down all the possibilities and tally the value on the other side, and then we find out the particular possibility which gives you the highest value. So first thing is we take one item at a time. So this particular thing, you have taken the 10 kg weight, you have noted its value. 20 kg weight, you have noted its value. 30 kg weight, you have noted its value. Same ways, you have taken two at a time. You have taken pairwise and you have noted their values. You have again taken the second pair, you have noted its value. Third pair, you have noted the value. Now you try taking all the three, but it has exceeded your bag. It can't come inside your bag, so which is why you reject this case. And yeah, so whatever cases you have noted down, you have seen that the maximum is 220 is the value which are able to generate maximum. And so exactly in that case, you try and take 220, and so exactly you pick up these two items and you go home happy, thinking that you have picked up the maximum thing. So now this was for a short case. If you are having a larger input, what do you do? So that's where recursion comes into the play. So yeah. So let's just see, first of all, how do we approach a recursive problem in this case? Okay. So as we have already studied previously, a recursive function consists of two parts. First is the base condition, and the second is the iterative condition. And since in the language which I'm going to prefer over here is C++, I've just defined a recursive function as follows. If you're new to C++, I would like to just break down this particular syntax for you. Int means that the type of value which is going to be returned is an integer value. Since every input is given to me as an integer, so I'm going to return the values of all of them, the maximum value whatever I generate as an integer. Yeah. Weights is an integer array, and value is also an integer array. Array is just something analogous to lists in what we studied in Python. Okay. And we have an integer argument, that is the capacity of the bag, and another argument which I have defined, which is basically the number of items which you can pick. So now one thing which we have to note over here is the weight array and the value array. These are two constant function parameters which are going to be passed, and the capacity and the number of items which are left, these are two items which are actually going to be varied. What do I mean by varied is like, don't confuse this W with actually this W. The fact over here is, let's say that you are having a bag of 10 kg. If you have inside a bag of 10 kg, if you initially its capacity is 10 kg. Okay. Now you have added contents worth 5 kg. So your capacity which is left inside the bag is now 10 minus 5. That is 5 kg. It's not 10 kg anymore. So in that aspect, it does vary. Okay. Similarly, talking about n, if you are having 3 items on the table and if you pick one and keep it inside your stack, or if you can either reject or you can accept one thing. And so once you have passed that particular item, you have choices only between 2 more items. So which is why your n value also decreases. So that's exactly what I wanted people to note down over here, that W and N are the two function parameters that are varied during recursion. And this is exactly the two parameters which will be our main focus. So in order to determine the base condition, we have to try and keep the smallest possible parameters which are going to be varied. And as I said, W and N are the only two parameters which can be varied in this particular case, because weight array and value array, these two are constant. So now if we are seeing over here, the least possible value of capacity is 0, in the sense like if you have filled your bag completely, you can't fill anymore, so W is equal to 0. If you can't fill anymore, means you can't add any more value into it, so your function should return 0, right? Logical. And in the other case, for the second variable, that is n, if you have no more items to choose from, you are not going to add any more items into your bag. If you're not going to add any more items into your bag, you're not adding any value to your bag. So again, you're going to return 0. So it's just basically the logical condition which I've applied here, and I'm returning 0. That's my base condition. Okay. Moving on to the iterative condition. This is where like things get a little bit tricky, and we need to actually try and think a little more recursive in this aspect. So in order to obtain the iterative condition in this particular case, I mean, like we haven't seen this sort of a setup in classical problems such as Fibonacci or a factorial. But this is an approach which actually suits for problems wherein like we have to make decisions. Okay. And so this is where we use a choice diagram or a decision tree. And one thing which everyone gets like slightly a misconception about recursion is that recursion is all about dividing the bigger problem into sub-problems, which is actually true, but that's not the main aim of recursion. The main aim is like when you are presented a bigger problem, you should be able to take a decision or a choice, which actually a consequence of that decision is basically your input becoming smaller. So that's exactly what we're going to do over here. And the rest of the points are actually self-explanatory. The only clarification which I would like to say is when I'm traversing the array, I'm going to be traversing from indices n-1 to 0. That is, I would be going in the reverse direction. Okay, that's it. So moving to the choice diagram. So this is like the most important part of this particular thing. So if I'm taking the item n-1, that is the last item in the particular array, as I had already pointed in the previous figure, I have two options. First is that it fits into my bag. Second thing, it can't fit into my bag, both of which are mathematically represented by this particular condition. And so now, if at all, if it can fit inside my bag, I have two options. That is, either I can include it or I can exclude it. If it doesn't fit in my bag, I have no other option but to exclude that particular item from keeping it in my bag. So that is my condition over there. If I include it, my mathematical condition, this is something, yeah. So if I'm including it, first thing, what is getting added? Its weight is getting added to the bag, and also its value is getting added to the bag. We want to return the value what is getting added. So first thing, we add the value of n minus 1. That is the value of the n minus 1th item which we have picked up. Plus, now we still have, after you have picked up the n minus 1th item, you have items from indices 0, 1, 2 till n minus 2. They are still remaining. You still haven't made any decisions about them, right? So you are yet to make a decision about them. So that is where we use a recursive call. Okay. And the capacity also decreases because you have added a particular element inside the array, right? The 10 kg, 5 kg example. So that is exactly what is coming here into the play. So a recursive call is made, and this is what our function returns over here. If we exclude, things are pretty much simple. We don't add any value. The capacity doesn't diminish. All that diminishes is the number of elements which we have to make a choice upon. So the n minus 1th element we have decided to reject it. So 0 to n minus 2 indices, we still have to make choice on them. So that is the recursive call over there. Same goes for this one, as we have already excluded it. If your thing was only to return all the possible sort of outcomes outcome values, then your problem would stop right over here. But our problem demands us to return the maximum value of the thing, because it's no use to simply have all of the values and then you taking a decision. Directly return the maximum value. So we just apply an inbuilt maximum value condition over here, and that's pretty simple. I mean, with that, our problem just concludes over here. So that's our iterative case using a choice diagram, and this is exactly the code implementation of that. This is the base condition. This is just the implementation of the choice diagram using a code. Purely just normal logical expression. And yeah, so this slide basically is just showing the input and the output for the given problem. And when I tried it in my local system, I was able to get a proper answer of 220 for the given input. So this code works. You can access the GitHub code over here. I have kept it in my GitHub repository in C++. And yeah, so I would like to leave everyone with a small practice problem. That is just print all the possible subsets of a given string. Here, the hint which I would like to give, it's similar to the knapsack problem, just that like you can either include an alphabet or you can exclude an alphabet for getting the subsequence of a string. A small table of which has been given over here. In computer science, this is something known as a one-hot encoding. So yeah, so this is exactly like just something to give you a basic idea as to like how it works. And just another hint which I have provided is a recursive tree regarding the same thing. The output is with an output over here and the input over here, just to get for a better clarity. Okay, and if you're still stuck, you can refer to the codes in the GitHub repository. Place the code over here for the subset string problem. You can refer to this if you're still stuck. And also, like whatever resources, if you want to further continue, I have compiled all great resources. I would personally recommend this recursion playlist by Aditya Verma. The only drawback is it's in Hindi. So if you are someone who doesn't understand Hindi, I have compiled a few good English resources also by MIT, Stanford, and Abdul Bari and a lot of other people. You can surely check out those also. Yeah, thank you. From here, Sai Teja will continue for the error propagation. Thank you.
Yes, very good.
I'll just be presenting Teja's content.
Sai Teja.
Yes, sir. Good morning, sir. Hello. Hello, am I audible?
Very good morning, Sai Teja.
Yes, sir.
Yes, you are audible.
Now I will solve the few problems on the multivariable error propagation. Can you change the slide, Pranav? Here we body weighs 22.6 kg in uncertainty of 0.1, and it moves with a velocity 5.42 meter per second with an uncertainty of 0.01. Now we have to find the kinetic energy with its uncertainties and also find the percentage uncertainties. Now we have the function kinetic energy function half mv square. It's a two variable function. Can you change the slide? So we have to find the error in the uncertainty in the kinetic energy. Now we will use the one of the formula designated by the Sarabes in the previous classes. Now we have to use the formula under root, differentiate the kinetic function with respect to m and multiply the error in the mass whole square plus differentiate the kinetic function with respect to v and multiply with the error in the velocity whole square. Now we get the differentiation of k with respect to m half v square, and differentiation of k with respect to v, we get the mv. Now we have to substitute the respective values in the formula. We get the delta k is equal to 1.64 kg meter per second whole square. Can you change the slide? Here in the equation 1, we will get the kinetic energy, I think functional value. We get the 61.25 kg meter per second whole square. In the second equation, we got the kinetic energy with its uncertainty, which is 61.25 plus or minus 1.64. Now we have to find the percentage uncertainties. Now we have to use the formula delta k by k into 100, where here the delta k is equal to 1.64 by k is equal to 61.64. Now we get the 2.66%, which is a percentage uncertainties. Can you change the slide, Pranav? Here the second question. Here the deflection of a cantilever beam, where the d represents the deflection of a beam, where FL, the formula of the deflection of a cantilever beam is equal to FL cube upon 3 times of EI, where it represents the applied force and L represents the beam, E represents the elasticity of the steel used in the beam, I is the moment of inertia of the beam. In the solution, we like to find the error in the cantilever beam and also find the maximum deflection in the cantilever beam. Next slide. Here we can see the cantilever beam. In the cantilever beam, we can observe two things. We get the two ends. One is the fixed end, another one is the free end. And the free end, by applying the force on the free end, we can see any deflection or deviation from its original position, and we get the. Now we apply the force 750 Newton, and the delta F is equal to 30 Newton. Delta F represents the error in the force, and the L is equal to length. Length is equal to 9 meters, and the delta L is equal to 0.03. Here the elasticity is equal to 7.5 into 10 to the power of 9, and the delta is equal to 5 into 10 to the power of 7, and I is equal to 0.005 meter, and delta L is equal to 0.005 into 10 to the power of -6. Can you change the slide? Here we will use the Taylor series formula. Here we have to differentiate the d with respect to variables, and we have to multiply the respective values with its respective errors. Here we can see delta F, we can see the delta differentiation of d with respect to F, L cube by EI, differentiation of d with respect to L 3 FL square by EI, and differentiation of d with respect to E FL cube by E square I, differentiation of d with respect to I FL cube by EI square. Now we have to substitute the respective values in the formula. We get the total answer delta d, which is the uncertainty in the deflection, is equal to 0.0039. Can you change the slide? Now we get the deflection with its uncertainty is equal to 0.1458 plus or minus 0.0039. We can observe a deflection of a beam is between 0.1497 and 0.19. Yeah, thank you, sir.
Yes. Yes. Fifth batch, you continue with the error estimate.
So good morning everyone. We are group 5. I am Siddharthan here to present you on error estimation, a topic on numerical methods. So moving on, any topic we are learning, we have to start with some questions. So I'm going to start with the questions: what is error? How to find error? Why do we need to estimate errors? So we have to answer these questions to understand this topic, understand error estimation. So now main idea for is to understanding the usage of error estimation. So moving on, I represented five slides here. So I'm making it easy for you to understand. Going on, we are going to understand all the error estimation by using the questions that we have discussed. So we are going to answer the questions one by one using all these slides. So moving on to the first slide. So we are now going to 250 BC, that is during the period of Archimedes. So he is using the bisection method in a circle, unit circle, so that he finds the value of pi. So I'm going to explain what I'm saying right now. So this is a unit circle and he's inscribing it with a polygon of n-sided polygon. Here it is an hexagon, and moving on, he encloses the whole circle with another polygon. Here it is a square. So now we can find the area of the polygons. We don't know any method to find the area of the value of the circle. So we are finding the value of area of the polygon using this formula: area of triangles formed into the number of sides. So assuming this is a unit circle, we have the areas 5 square units. That is the theory one. So this polygon is inscribed inside the circle. So normally this area is lesser than the area of the circle, and the larger polygon will be having an area greater than the area of the circle. So that is, in this case, the hexagon's area can be found out to be 3 and the square's area is found out to be 4. So pi is ranging between these two values. So that is the representation I'm doing here. That is a circle, inscribed a polygon, and enclosed by a polygon. So moving on, he also did it for 12-sided polygons, and he found out the same result, like the pi is ranging from these two numbers. So moving on to the next slide, I'm discussing one by one. So later I will explain what I'm aiming to do. So now we move on the same to bisection method. A person named Rudolf van Sion, he did the same for a polygon of 2 into 6 power 20, 2 into 62, 2 power 62 sides. That is 4 quintillion sides. That's very big. And it took for him like 20 years of calculation. So he found pi value 35. It took 35 correct decimal places. So then came Sir Isaac Newton. So binomial theorem was applicable during his period. So everyone has the ability to use the binomial theorem. But Sir Isaac Newton used in a different way. This is the binomial theorem which we have seen. Normally it is defined only for positive integers, but he thought about using it for negative integers, and he tried using it for negative integers, and he succeeded, and he got the formula for negative integers of n. And similarly, he tried for rational numbers like 1 by 2, 3 by 2, and he got the correct results. So an example for that is this. So why I'm saying this, you'll see in the next slide. So now we are finding an area of a circle, a unit circle with the equation x square plus y square equal to 1. So I'm representing the circle here. So y can be represented as root of 1 minus x square. So using the binomial theorem we have learned before. So this is 1 minus x square the whole power 0.5. So we can expand this as represented here. And we are finding the area for this region. During Isaac Newton's time, there was calculus available. So you integrate this from 0 to 1, you get the area of the circle, quartered area of the circle, that is pi by 4. This area is pi by 4. So you get the equation for that, and you get the expansion, infinite series expansion for pi. So this achieved the same 35 correct decimal places as mentioned by Rudolf in a comparatively very less time. And now representing the infinite series of tan inverse of x. So we know the differential of tan inverse of x is 1 by 1 plus x square, that is 1 plus x square the whole power minus 1. And this is again a binomial. Using binomial theorem, we can expand it as this. So integrating, then we will get the result for tan inverse of x. So you might be wondering why I am saying all these infinite series, tan inverse of x expansion, pi expansion. I will explain in the next slide. So moving on to our main concept, main aim, error. So error in applied mathematics is the difference between a true value and an estimated value or an approximate value. So error can be represented by terms like epsilon in here, and error is calculated using the difference between the values, estimated and true values. So in numerical analysis, we have different types of errors, like round off errors, that is a common example we know, that is pi is equal to 22 by 7, and that represents that approximation leads to error. We approximate pi to 22 by 7, that leads to some type of errors. And then we go to the truncation errors. This is what we are discussing so long about. I am trying to explain because this involves infinite series representation of a number. Like pi, we have an infinite series representation. Like this we have an infinite series representation. But in truncation methods, we limit it to some numbers. Like we don't do it for every infinite things. We can't do it. So we are doing it for a specific number of terms so that it gets a significant value. So we found two methods of finding pi, using tan inverse method and using the binomial method. We found two methods. So we are finding the value of pi for the first pi numbers of the pi. You can see that these two values are not equal to the value of pi that we have known. So this type of errors are called truncation errors. So finding the error in these methods, we can simply do by this method. This is a simple example. I'm not going very complex into that. So a normal pi up to 9 decimal places, I'm accurately placing here. That is, pi is greater than this number. This is the nearly approximate number, and these are very far. So now we are finding the error. So we can represent error as this inequality, because we don't know, because pi value is actually going infinitely long. The decimals are infinite. We can't predict the decimals unless we are calculating it thoroughly. So this errors also is actually an irrational number. So all the way long, the irrational numbers part is doing the it's troubling us, because it is giving an random numbers after the decimal point, and that so that we can't find the error correctly. So now we have answered the question, what is the error and how do we calculate, how do we find the error. So moving on to the next slide, this is my final slide. Why do we need to estimate the error, and why not use the word find in this? So we are estimating error. Estimation means approximating. We are finding the approximate result. So irrational numbers, we are seeing this so far that pi is an irrational number, root 2 is an irrational number, like these. So the numbers goes on, and we can't predict it unless we calculate it. It is not a rational number, so we can't find the error accurately. So estimation is actually finding the round of result. So now understanding the usage of estimating errors. This is the last question we want to discuss. These error quantities are useful for evaluating the accuracy of different numerical methods when the exact solution is known. So we have this pi values. We have two methods for, we have did two methods for finding the value of pi, and these two methods give two different results when truncated. So what happens is, some methods will be more efficient than the others. So that is the usage of errors. So if you find the error for this method and this method has more error in compared to this method. So this method is more efficient. So I'm concluding by saying what I have did before. This is the bisection method, and this is the tan inverse method All these shows that the pi value is an irrational number. It goes on infinitely, and that leads to error. So in real life, we have various applications of error estimation. We are going to see the error estimation with the help of our friends. Now proceeding the Vanam Nagasri. Can you ask for control, Vanam? Yeah.
Hello everyone, today I am discussing about the error estimation. Error estimation is nothing but the difference between an estimated value and the value of a parameter. Also, sometimes we can predict the value is known as error estimation. It also indicates the reliability and quality of numerical solution. Secondly, the global error between the exact solution and an approximate solution is known as forward error, and bound of it can be given by using the backward error. Author of modern age estimation was Hofbauer. Although some accounts suggest the scales were used for age of estimation as early in 1888, the first of use of ortholis for age estimation was attributed to Rebisch in 1899. Theory of estimation was found by the Professor R.A. Fisher in a series of fundamental papers. In 1930, it was classified into two groups. One is point estimation and another is interval estimation. In point estimation, we will get a sample statistics is used to provide an estimate of the population parameter, whereas in interval estimation, we will get a range in which specified within the true value of a parameter might expected to be lie. Point estimation is nothing but a particular value of a statistic used to estimate a given parameter is known as point estimate or estimate of parameter. A good estimator is one which is close always to the true value of the parameter as much as possible. Some of the criteria that should have for a good estimator was unbiasedness, consistency, efficiency, and the sufficiency. Interval estimation. An interval estimation was it provides us more information about a population than a point estimation. Such interval estimates are called as confidence intervals. A confidence interval we will use most common type in our interval estimation. There are different types of error estimation. In general, we have three types of error estimation. One is quantity errors, rate errors, and errors of omission. In general, we have many types of errors. Total error was classified into 4 types: modeling errors, inherent errors, numerical errors, and blunders. Again, inherent errors classified into 2 types: data errors and conversion errors. In numerical errors, it classified into round-off errors and truncation errors. In numerical computation, there are 2 main sources of errors. One is round-off error and another is truncation error. Truncation error result when the approximations are used to represent exact mathematical procedure, whereas round-off errors result when the numbers having limited significant figures are used to represent exact numbers. Round-off errors are also known as arithmetic errors. In general, a round-off error, also called as rounding error, it is nothing but the difference between the result produced by a given algorithm using exact arithmetic and the result produced by the same algorithm using finite precision. Round-off error occurs because of computing device inability to deal with certain numbers. Such numbers need to be rounded off to some near approximation, which is dependent on the word size used to represent numbers of the device. For example, we take 42.7893 will be round off to 2 decimal digits, that is 42.79. Round-off error is a machine dependent one, and round-off errors arise because digital computers cannot represent some quantities exactly. So there are two major facts of round-off errors involved in numerical calculations. One is digital computers have size and precision limits on their ability to represent numbers. Secondly, there is certain numerical manipulations are highly sensitive to round-off errors. This can result from both mathematical considerations as well as from the way in which computers perform arithmetic operations. And there are two common rounding rules. One is round by chop and another is round to nearest one. There are causes of round-off error. Round-off errors are due to inexactness in the representation of real numbers and the arithmetic operations done with them. Digital computers have magnitude and precision limits on their ability to represent numbers. Certain numerical manipulations are highly sensitive to round-off errors. We can get rid of round-off errors by increasing the number of digits allowed in a representation reduces the magnitude of possible round of errors, but any representation limited to finitely many digits will still cause some degree of round of error for uncountability of many real numbers. Truncation error is defined as it is nothing but difference between the two, that is analytical derivative of a function and its derivative obtained by the numerical approximation. Truncation means just we will limit the number of digits right to the decimal point. The word truncate, it means to be shortened, and it's a method dependent one. In truncation error classified into two kinds based on numerical integration. One is local truncation, the error which caused by one iteration. Global truncation error, which is nothing but the cumulative error caused by many iterations. In numerical analysis and scientific computing, truncation error is an error caused by approximating a mathematical processes. Truncation error arises when we replace the infinite process with the finite one. For example, infinite series 1 by 2 plus 1 by 4 plus 1 by 8 plus 1 by 16 plus 1 by 32 and so on. If we add, we will get exactly 1. Causes of truncation error. With computers, truncation can occur when a decimal number is typecast as an integer. It is truncated to 0 digits because integers cannot store non-integer real numbers. Next, Tarun will say about what are the procedure we will do in numerical and error estimation.
Next slide, please.
Tarun?
Yeah, I am going to discuss about the how do we calculate error in numerical methods. Let's go learn few fundamental numerical analysis. So all the numbers that we have used in numerical analysis are the two types as follow, and one is exact numbers, and second one is approximate numbers. So exact numbers that have their exact quantity means their value isn't going to change. For example, 3, 2, 5, 7 are numbers of centimeters in a meter or numbers of feet in a mile. So exact numbers is a value that is known as its complete certainty. For example, there are exactly 3 feet 1 yard, or there are exactly 12 eggs in a dozen, or a class may contain 25 students. An exact number cannot be simplified or reduced. So next one is approximate numbers. These numbers are represented in decimal numbers. Then they have some certain degree of accuracy, like the value pi is 3.1416. If we want more precise value, so we can write also 3.14159.265. So, but we can't write the exact value of pi. So it is
The same thing, honestly.
Banerjee, what happened to your camera? It is
Yes,
working or?
like it has some problems in.
Okay. Tejwa, hope you Sir, don't have any problem with your camera. sir, I am in computers. I don't have any external camera. You are unable to present. Okay, fine. You continue with it. Thank you. So approximate number is the one that does not have uncertainty. So it has defined as a number approximated to exact number. And there is also difference between exact number and approximate number. For example, 369 are exact number. They do not need any approximation. But we see here pi is an approximate number, and as they cannot express exactly by a finite digit, so they can be written as a 3.1416, etc., which are only approximation to the true values. So let's go to the next slide. So how do you count significant digits in a given number? So first of all, what is significant number? The number of digits in a value, often a measurement that contributes to a degree of accuracy of a true value. So for the accuracy, it is a level measurement that gives a true as well as consistent results. So for example, in the normal value of pi, 3.1416, there are 5 significant digits, and we have more precise value of it, pi value 3.1415925. So let me explain here. There are few rules in significant figures. All non-zero digits are significant. Suppose here we take 5. There is no zeros. All non-zeros will be a significant. 3.1416 is a significant number. So non zeros between non-zero digits are also significant. Suppose here we take example. 3 and 4 are non-zero digit. In between there is a two zeros. It also be a significant. So third one is that a trailing zero or a final zero in a decimal position also be a significant. So after that, after the zero of the right side, we can 1, 2, 3. Here is for example. It is also we can calculate as a significant figures, and it is in a form significant representation of number. It is a representation number of numbers. It is also a significant number. Let's move to the next slide. So what? Okay, absolute error. There are types of error in numerical analysis. So what is absolute error? Let the true value of the quantity be x and the approximate value of quantity be x1. Hence, the absolute value defined as difference between the x1 and x2, and absolute value denoted by dA. Its formula is x minus x1, where x minus x1 is a delta x. So it's simply it is a difference between a measured value and true value is called absolute value. And there is also similar formula called mean absolute value. So the mean absolute value is the average of all absolute values. It also similar formula like mean absolute value equal to 1 by n summation of n tends to I equal to 1 xi minus x1 is which is absolute value, where n is the number of errors. So let's go to the next. Let's error percentage error. So percentage error is a difference between the estimated value and the actual value in comparison to the actual value, and it is expressed as a percentage. So it's a where EP is the percentage error. Here is the formula, and also we can write that percentage error is equal to the estimated value minus actual value by actual value. So it is percentage. No, we should multiply into 100. So next slide. So relative accuracy. So let's say we have number delta x equal to mod x1 minus x. So it is upper limit of magnitude of absolute error and known as absolute accuracy. And similarly, the quantity of delta x by mod x or delta x by mod x1 is also called as relative accuracy. The relative accuracy means how accurate a measurement is compared to a true value. So there is a formula also, relative accuracy. Relative accuracy equal to absolute error by true value into 100. So let's discuss more clearly with example in upcoming slide. So here is an example. So this question is a relation between all absolute, relative, and percentage error. So here the example is we are given approximate value of pi is 22/7, and true value is 3.145629, and calculate the absolute and relative and percentage value. And as we know that absolute value, the formula is um, the absolute value formula is EA equal to x minus x1 equal delta x, where here given the true value, here we given true value as 3.1415926, and approx value 3. By here we can calculate the absolute value, absolute error, and second, by calculating absolute error, we can find out the how relative error can be calculated. So we already know we have formula for this relative error. Relative error equal to absolute error divided by true value of its quantity. So here we got the relative error, and next one is percentage error. So percentage error is equal to the 100 multiplied by absolute error by true value. If you want in percentage, you can multiply by 100, and we got this answer. Let's get more. Let's go to the next example. So here is a let the approximate value of the number is 1 by 3 be 0.30, 0.33, and 0.34. Find out the best approximation value. So already we know our approach is that we first find the value of the absolute error, and any value having at least absolute will be a best. So we can calculate the absolute error in all approx given values. So here it will be x1 equal to 0.30, x2 equal to 0.33, and x3 equal to 0.34. And here from the calculating absolute error, where the absolute error formula is mod of x minus x1. So we got here, we can say that this is the most precise value to the 1 by 3 number. So next question, this is a simple basic formula, difference between two roots. Means, how can we calculate approximate numbers? So this is basic problem. Let's go to next topic. So next topic is numerical and error analysis, computational physics. As you know, guys, computational physics is a study of scientific problems using computational methods, and it also the study of implementation of numerical analysis to solve problems in physics. So here we discuss about what are the errors we do to solve problems or solve complex problems in computational physics. So here first one is discretization error. So these errors are due to the difference between the exact solution of the model equation and the numerical solution with limited time and space resolution. So what is a discretization error is that is the error resulting from the fact that function of a continuous variable is represented in a computed by finite number of evaluations. So discretization error is a principal source of error in a method of finite difference and a pseudospectral method of a computed physics. So, what is pseudospectral method? It is also known as a discrete variable representation method, or in class of numerical methods used in applied mathematics and scientific computing for solution of a partial differential equation. So when we here when we define dy by dx, here y of x plus e minus y of x divided by e, where e is the finitely small number. And the difference between the first formula and this approximation is known as discretization error. So next slide. So empirical constant error. So empirical constant error comes from the poor representation of a physical or mathematical constants. So originating based on observation of experience of empirical data. If we represent wrong or poor data and we get error, and this is called empirical constant error. And next one is the modeling error. Modeling error comes from the incomplete or inaccurate description of a problem we wish to solve. So modeling error is related to the simplification of applied error to physical problem. So if we give incomplete or inaccuracy of understanding our problem, so we cannot solve. This is also a type of error. and the last one is the input error. So input error can come from the user generated approximate of parameter of a given system. So input error is information provided by a user that is not accepted. If you give wrong input, and the output will be also be wrong. So these are the types it uses in the computational physics. So thank you, and I request to Sushma to take over this presentation.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sir, actually we have next class, sir. At 12:45 we have thermal engineering class, sir. 12:45.
12:45. No issues. We will continue tomorrow.
Sir, we can continue now, sir, until 12:45.
No. I have.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir.
Work.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir.
Momi or
Okay, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Momi, what was tomorrow? What was 11:30 to 12:20 class? What is
1 second, sir. 11:30 to 12:20. Sir, we have a free period, sir.
okay? Concerning this fifth batch, 3 more has to present. So previously, Sushant and Sushma has to present, and probably 3, 6, and 18 minutes. Whether it is difficult for you to join during 12:10.
So, sir, tomorrow we don't have a free slot, sir. Like we have we have another subject class at 11:30, sir.
అక్క మారిపోయింది ఒకసారి చూడు ఒకసారి నాది అయిపోయింది ప్రెజెంటేషన్ కెమెరా ఆన్ చేయలే కానీ మంచి
Tejwa, I think unmuted. Okay, yeah, as per the schedule, we will wait. Okay, so tomorrow, yes, come on.
Yes, sir. Sir, and one more thing, sir. Like, any chance of having like extending the assignment, like submission of the notes, any times or extra time or something?
Why, what is doing that?
Sir, can we get something like 3 more days for submitting it, sir?
3 more days.
Yes, sir.
Okay. This is tomorrow.
Yes. Sir, since like people are actually like they are moving to campus, a few of them and all, like so they are actually held up in those
13th and 14th. Like
so
actually
that
13th and
aspect
14th.
actually they requested, sir. Like that was the issue actually.
Okay, that will be. This is only you stop recording and you can.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, I have.